Sixers. We take a unique look at the Sixers each and every day. It's brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning, your local provider who makes it easy to upgrade your home to the most energy-efficient equipment on the market. Plus, learn how to get a free furnace during the month of March only online at broadlees.net. Our Sixers insider, Paul Hudrick from 97.3 ESPN.com. He is the host of the Coming In for a Landing podcast, which is out now. Check it out. And he joins us here on the Boardwalk Honda hotline as the Sixers with, I got to say, Paul, it might be in the entire Embiid-Simmons era, it might be one of the most impressive games I've seen them play, and that's without Joel Embiid.
I'll tell you what, two of their last three have been pretty darn impressive without Joel Embiid, which is, when you just think about it in the context of how poorly this team has played without Joel Embiid over the years, to have two blowouts over the span of, 3 games without him, it's mind-blowing. I think that speaks to the veteran presence that are, some of the players, a guy like Danny Green, a guy like Seth Curry, Dwight Howard, Tobias Harris, and the professionalism he brings. It's a big-time growth step, and you have to obviously give Doc Rivers credit because they're not taking opponents lightly, and without those other guys, other players are stepping up, and they're playing just really good team basketball. Not to oversimplify it too much, but really good team basketball on both sides.
They really are, and I want to get your take on, what are they doing without Embiid different, if anything? What is different about the way they're approaching these games without Joel? Or are they just saying, hey, Tony Bradley and Dwight Howard, give us your best? Or are they building things, or are they, offensively, are they doing a little something different without Joel? Because Joel gets a ton of touches. So how are they compensating for not having him?
Yeah, it's very clear. They're running the offense mostly through Tobias and Ben Simmons, and then looking to score off of that, whether it's kickouts to Danny Green or Seth Curry, whether it's maybe a dribble handoff or a pick and roll with Seth Curry. We saw a little bit of that with Tony Bradley, but yeah, I think the idea is, you don't need Tony Bradley or Dwight Howard to beat Joel Embiid, because he's Joel Embiid. He's arguably the MVP. I think he is the MVP of the league up until now. We'll see what happens, but yeah, you don't need those guys to be that. You need them to be Tony Bradley and Dwight Howard, and those guys are pretty good, and they can give you what Tony Bradley does, like what he does well. I think Doc Rivers is kind of bringing that out, and same with Dwight Howard. And I think if I'm going to give Doc Rivers credit for anything, and I think kind of what he's done for Tobias Harris is kind of a microcosm of it, is he looks at guys and he plays to their strengths. It's not about, oh, you need to do it. No, like what works for you? How can I get the most out of you? And I think that might be, with all due respect to Brett Brown, I think that might be the biggest difference that Doc Rivers has done with Tobias Harris, with Ben Simmons. And I think you're seeing it right now with Tony Bradley and Dwight Howard. None of these guys are trying to do too much. They're playing within themselves. And when they all do that, they can contribute. Tony Bradley has been, it's been kind of illuminating to watch him play over the last 3 games. Like it's, like when that trade went down for Zaire Smith, you were like, Tony Bradley, like what is, like, he had some good advanced metric numbers and all that kind of stuff, but no one expected this. And as a third center right now, that is looking like a masterstroke by Daryl Morey in the front office.
Yeah, I know Bradley's interesting. He was a first-round pick. People don't realize he was a guy who was a first-round pick and maybe just bloom it a little late. And this isn't to say, who needs Embiid? You got Bradley, much like Embiid tweeted the other night, hey, build around Bradley. But it'll be interesting to see how much he can keep this up. The tandem of him and Howard. I thought Howard was terrific last night. I thought he played with a ton of energy. Now, the next guy that I thought last night really was terrific and has been terrific is Thybulle. If he could shoot the way he's been shooting, you really have something here. But you almost wonder, does Doc have to reevaluate how much time figure out a way to get him more playing time?
Well, if he keeps hitting threes at the rate he's hitting threes, and if he keeps kind of just doing it, like doing those little things offensively that maybe, don't show up, but, understanding the spacing of the offense, understanding where to be when Joel Embiid posts up or when Ben Simmons posts up or when there's just kind of knowing where he's supposed to be on the floor and finding those little empty spots, knowing when to cut. I feel like, again, I think I said this before, but Danny Green is a perfect example of what Thybulle should aspire to be. And Thybulle has the potential, to me, to be a better defender than Danny Green was even in his prime. So if he could just kind of understand the way Danny Green has learned how to play with star players and kind of fit into the offense, the sky's kind of the limit in that role as that 3-and-D player. And it's an ideal role when you're talking about a team that already has Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris, to have a guy like Thybulle that's so impactful defensively. And Mike, what's to me the best thing that he has done this year is he's still making those impact plays. He's still getting deflections. He's still coming up with steals and blocks, but he's also playing smarter. He's not fouling as much. He's not as jumpy as he was. And he's playing against Zach LaVine and Bradley Beal and these good players. And what was impressive against those two guys is not necessarily that he held them to low percentages, but he held them to low volume of shots. They couldn't even attempt shots because he was playing them so well. So I just think, he, to your point, like to your question, Mike, if he keeps hitting threes at this rate, Doc Rivers can't keep him off the floor because he's so impactful defensively.
Well, and what I guess it really opens up is the possibility of, not that they wouldn't feel comfortable moving Green, but I think it would make you feel a heck of a lot better about moving Green if I have Thybulle's defense and him hitting shots. Not that Green's been hitting shots at this amazing, ability, but he has the pedigree. He can hit a shot, and he plays okay defense. I think his legs are starting to give out on that end of the court, at times. But now you feel better about Thybulle playing more meaningful minutes. Does that jive with you?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think Danny Green, I agree that I think the one thing I've noticed about him defensively, he's still pretty good, but you're right. Like, I don't think he's a guy who you throw on a number one option of another team. I don't think he can do that anymore, but he's certainly not a minus. He's still a plus. When you play a team like the Wizards, should he be guarding Bradley Beal? No, he should not. But he can handle other assignments. He can handle, I would say his biggest issue is kind of like the more explosive players. Those kind of guys aren't really that's not really in his wheelhouse anymore. But what it does is it just gives Doc Rivers more confidence and more flexibility. So maybe Danny Green starts a game, but if Thybulle's doing a really good job, you can close with Thybulle. And I think that's another thing to compliment Doc Rivers on, not to gush over Doc too much in this segment, but if something is working, he'll close with a line. Like, he doesn't feel like he has to close with his starting five. If Matisse Thybulle or Shake Milton are giving him good minutes, he's comfortable saying, okay, I'll close with those guys because they're playing well. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that you just gives you Matisse playing this way is just giving Doc more confidence, and he's not afraid to put him in there in big situations, especially knowing he's not going, maybe he doesn't add a ton to the offense, but he's not going to hurt the offense.
Yeah, no question. And another thing, I want to get your opinion on this because you wrote a great draft primer. I encourage everybody to go read this at 973ESPN.com. It's a really good, in-depth look at the trade. But how does that change? I know you just wrote this whole thing, but how does it change, if at all? And I'm not telling you need to go write a whole nother one. But with Joel Embiid out, do they expedite the process? Do they have to target a different, spot possibly? How, if at all, does losing Embiid for 2 to 3 weeks hopefully change anything for Daryl Morey?
Yeah, if it were me, and I don't know what Daryl Morey's thinking, but if it were me, I would stay the course. He's going to be out for at least 2 weeks. Obviously, he's going to be reevaluated at that time, so we'll see if he's back in the lineup or if he needs a little bit more time to heal. To me, I'm going at it the same way. I don't want to overreact. It's, I think if it's that time, I believe it's 8 games he'd miss. So he's already missed 1. So you just got to get through maybe 7 more games without him. So just weather the storm, try to win as many games as you can without him, and then approach the trade deadline, to me, the same way you would have if he was healthy. And that is, if you can land that big fish, like let's say, again, for the best example of that is Kyle Lowry, you go aggressively after it because he gives you a really good shot to compete with a team like the Nets or the Bucks and to maybe come out of the East. So if that opportunity is still there, you take it. But I'm getting the sense, I'm feeling more like if it's not Lowry, it's not going to be a big splash. It's going to be more, a couple solid moves on the margins, a couple of bench guys, just bolster the depth. Maybe not to take over anyone's spot necessarily on that bench unit that has played extremely well recently, but just to give, again, more options for Doc Rivers. So if he gets into a playoff series and someone's struggling, he's got another guy he can go to. A guy like Will Barton, I know that's a guy that's been thrown out there. He would be an excellent fit. You look at, you bring him off the bench, maybe you upgrade over Korkmaz. He's a little bit better defensively.
After last night, do I want to upgrade over Korkmaz?
Listen, no, I hear, and look, if I'm being honest, like the bench has been great, but I still worry about the sustainability of that over the course of the second half and against better teams. Like with all due respect to the 3 teams that they played, what happens when they play deeper teams? What happens when that bench unit has to go up against, a Nets lineup that might have 2 or 3 stars in it? Are they going to be able to hang? So that's where my concern comes in. And I just think, and having that firepower, because yes, and I take nothing away from Furkan Korkmaz because he's played very well, but the consistency, the ability to create off the dribble, and the defense, I think that's all an upgrade that a guy like a Will Barton can give you.
Yeah.
But that to me, that's an upgrade. That's the kind of deals I'm looking at. If it's like a on the margins move where you don't have to give up much, then I'm probably keeping for Korkmaz with that bench unit and just kind of creating more competition.
Yeah, no, and I'm half joking. I mean, when he has nights where he's just, shooting it, he shoots it, pretty well. I'm kind of intrigued by your thoughts on Reed. He came in last night in garbage time, hit a 3. If you watched or paid attention to him in the G League at all, he had about 45% of his threes. Do the Sixers find enough intrigue to give him some rotational minutes in that stretch 4 spot? Do you see that happening?
I personally don't see that happening because
you hit 45% of your threes. Don't you want to? I might be just intrigued to see why you hit 45%, and then he came out last night and stroked one.
Right. I think he might get a look at some point in some way. I don't know how that will happen. Whether that's an injury, whether that's someone getting in foul trouble, I think he gets a look. Or another scenario could be, what if a team throws out a stretch 5 at you that really isn't a good matchup for Tony Bradley or Dwight Howard? Then maybe do you go to Paul Reed because maybe he can play that stretch 5 role and give you some good minutes there. So I think he gets some form of opportunity, but I also don't think that Doc Rivers is necessarily going to go out of his way to give him that, if that makes sense. Listen, again, I don't want to take anything away from him. The kid played unbelievable. He should be the G League MVP. Like, honestly, he really should be because he played that well down there. But it's a different game. The team is playing so well right now. That bench unit looks really good. Do you really want to mess with that flow right now? So that's kind of where I see it. But I do think at some point, again, whether it's injury, whether it's personnel of the other team, he'll get a look in some way, whether that's I see it more as a stretch 5 than a stretch 4, but we'll see what Doc Rivers has in mind.
All right. I know that. And by the way, again, I implore everybody to go check out Paul's draft primer over at 973ESPN.com. Bobby Marks commented over the weekend that the Sixers are loaded with assets. And I think first I'm thinking to myself, what does he mean by this? The draft, the trade exception is one reason. 7 expiring contracts is one of the reasons why he feels like they have a real ability here. So I didn't really figure that they had 7 expiring contracts. This is a way that Daryl Morey can get really creative.
Absolutely. I know Sam Amick of The Athletic just put out like a trade. I think it was like 12 trade targets he had out there, and Kyle Lowry was obviously listed. And if you look at all the other, like a team like the Clippers was his example. The Clippers, how on earth could they possibly do the salary to make it work for Kyle Lowry? I don't see a path for that. And then they can't offer nearly as attractive of a package as a team like the Sixers could. And I think that flexibility and a mind like Daryl Morey with that flexibility is dangerous. And I mean that in a good way. The expiring contracts, they have an $8.2 million trade exception from the Al Horford deal. They still have the taxpayer mid-level for buyout guys. I mean, they can make things work. They had Danny Green's $15 million contract. If you want to go after that big fish, that could go a long way in matching salary. Mike Scott at $5 million. I mean, they have some really interesting expiring contracts. And guys that do, like a guy like Terrence Ferguson, who doesn't factor in on this team at all, is $3.9 million on an expiring contract.
Poirier.
That could be Poirier. Absolutely. Those contracts could be really, really valuable if you're just looking at matches and then wanting to use. And the other thing is, too, first-round picks. The Sixers only have the 2025 first-round pick is the only one that they do not have. So they possess all their first-round picks. They have a bunch of second-round picks. So compared to other contenders, they are in an excellent spot to make an addition or two.
I mean, we know that Joel is going to miss at least 2 to 3 weeks here. I mean, you think they see how they're doing over this 10 games, this 10-day span or 14-day span, bring him back slowly, or do you think they want to get him back out there? There are some contractual ramifications if Joel has an exceptional season, let's say.
Right. I think they're going to be smart. I think he's going to be smart too, because I think he gets it from this. I think what this year has proven about Joel Embiid is that he just gets it. The light bulb has gone on for him in a big way. And I think part of that is realizing I need to be smart about what I like. I think he's listening to his body. Like when his back is bothering him and he's like, you know what, this doesn't feel right. I don't think I should play on it. And then he doesn't play. Or if his back is hurting a little bit, but he's like, you know what, it hurts, but I think I'm good. Like I think he just kind of has that feel for his body now that maybe he didn't have last year or the year before. So I think that's a part of it. He's going to, as much as, of course, the doctors and the athletic training staff are going to have to clear him, I think he is going to be smart enough to know, all right, I'm good. I can play on this. Or no, you know what? Let's just give it a couple more days and let's see where we're at. So I think they're going to be smart about it because, look, the number one seed doesn't matter. The MVP, winning the MVP doesn't matter if Joel Embiid isn't there for the playoffs. That's all that really is all that matters. If it's 3 weeks and they get bumped down to the 3 seed, it's worth it to give him that extra week to make sure he is 100%. I get what you're saying about the contractual stuff, and of course, him being MVP would go a long way in a lot of ways. But the Sixers will take care of him in his next contract, so I don't know if he's that worried about that. But yeah, I think they're going to be cautious because this guy's just way too valuable and way too important to where they want to go and trying to compete for a title.
Yeah, it was a fun game last night. Great ball movement. I mean, tremendous defense last night. They had a lot of elements of a fun team to watch. They beat a Spurs team who's a playoff team right now. The worst loss in the history of the Spurs franchise. I mean, some people listening have never seen the Spurs not make the playoffs. So to beat them as handily as they did last night, it was one of the more impressive and entertaining games to watch. It was just fun. Now, you're not going to hit 50% from 3 the way they shot it last night, but it was good stuff. Sixers insider Paul Hudrick, at Paul Hudrick on Twitter. He's the host of the Coming In for a Landing podcast. You had a little reunion on that podcast, so everybody go check that out. And you can check that out on YouTube and find Paul on Twitter to go check out his Coming In for a Landing podcast. He and the guys do excellent work on covering the Sixers. Down the stretch they come. The trade deadline in about 2 weeks from Thursday. All right, Paul, we will talk to you on Wednesday, man.
Sounds good, Mike. Take care, man.
Paul's back for Inside the Sixers on Wednesday's show. And, of course, he, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline, doing a little research on this deal for Jalen Mills. If you want the particulars, Mills signs a 4-year, $24 million deal, $9 million guarantees with the New England Patriots. Now, last year he played 55% of his snaps at safety. We know he moved from corner to safety, and the Eagles are going to have to replace another. Look, think about this. He played 55% of the snaps at safety, which means he had to go play corner because of all the injury problems they had. So now, essentially, they need 2 players to replace Mills. It's a big loss. And again, that's one of those where, look, if you don't like Roseman, you have to at least say, look, I don't like Roseman. Jalen Mills was a starter on the team that won the Super Bowl in the 7th round. That's finding good talent late in the draft. And Mills is gone. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And, of course, watch the show live on our website, 97.3ESPN.com. When we come back, I will go through the text board. I will be going through your chat messages. And Jeff Mosher at 4 o'clock for Football at 4. Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. It is brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan. The all-new Matt Blatt Nissan is now open on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township next to Home Depot. Online, mattblattnissan.com.
We never stop talking Eagles and NFL. It's Football at 4. Every day at 4 p.m. on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Since there was no basketball tournament last March, Unibet is offering twice the sign-up bonus this year. Get $40 free and $500 risk-free. With twice the bonus, go twice as hard. Woo! Watch on 2 screens. Woohoo, yeah! On 2 couches. Both chicks. And place twice the bets. Bonus! Get $40 free and $500 risk-free. Unibet Sportsbook. Crazy about the odds. Must be 21 or over to play and physically located in New Jersey. Restrictions apply. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Hey, I'm Jordan, and a little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A new Grilled Spicy Deluxe is that cilantro lime sauce that goes on it. That's just